The Chase Sapphire Preferred is what I believe to be the best first travel card that everybody should get, but there are some common traps that people fall into and some big mistakes that you can make with the Sapphire Preferred. So in this video, I'm going to go over 5 big mistakes that you need to avoid on the Chase Sapphire Preferred. And I know that these mistakes are common traps that people fall into because I've made every single one of these mistakes myself. The first big mistake that people make on the Chase Sapphire Preferred is using the $50 hotel credit. The Chase Sapphire Preferred gives you a $50 hotel credit every single year for any hotel stays that you book through the Chase travel portal. And on the surface, this is a great benefit that can give you significant value and can lower your effective fee down to just $45. So you might be wondering to yourself, how is this a mistake and a common trap that people fall into when that hotel credit is giving you significant added value on the Chase Sapphire Preferred? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. To give you a personal example, this past year, I used my $50 hotel credit on my Sapphire Preferred to stay at the Versante Hotel in Vancouver, Canada. The Versante Hotel typically goes for about $350 per night when you book that through the Chase travel portal. And don't get me wrong, the hotel was fantastic and I had a great time with my wife during our stay in Vancouver. But realistically, I was not planning on spending this amount of money on a hotel, and I already had a significant amount of Hilton points. So the only reason that I went ahead and booked this hotel through the Chase travel portal is because I had that $50 hotel credit. However, I would argue that the hotel credit was outside of my organic spending because I wasn't planning on spending that much money. And even with that $50 hotel credit, I still spent $300 out of pocket. Plus, in general, there are some significant downsides when booking through a travel portal because sometimes prices can be inflated and you typically don't retain your status that you might have with specific travel brands when you book that travel through a travel portal. So if I would have decided to utilize my Hilton points and book a Hilton property in Vancouver instead, then I would have retained my Hilton Gold status, which would have given me benefits like a food credit and space available room upgrades. I would argue that in a lot of cases, having status alone is going to be worth more than that $50 hotel credit because, like, for example, with my Hilton Gold status, we got free breakfast during our honeymoon when we stayed at the Waldorf Astoria Cancun that was valued at over $100. Additionally, I think it's best to utilize an earn and burn strategy when it comes to credit card points, which basically means that if you have credit card points, you should be utilizing them and putting them to work whenever you can. The best use of that $50 hotel credit on the Chase Sapphire Preferred is to utilize that credit at a boutique hotel where you can't use points and hotel status is irrelevant, and when that boutique hotel is already within your organic spending, so you already had a desire to stay at that specific hotel and you're not just going out of your way to be able to utilize that $50 credit. I just feel like a common trap that people fall into, including myself, is to feel like you have to use a credit because otherwise you're losing money, when in reality you have to make sure that utilizing that credit is still going to fall within your organic spending. And personally, I don't plan on using the $50 hotel credit on my Chase Sapphire Preferred going forward unless it makes complete sense to do so within my organic spending. Additionally, another huge mistake that people make with the Chase Sapphire Preferred is to use this card for some of the daily common purchases that you're making. The Chase Sapphire Preferred gets point multipliers of 5x back on travel booked through the Chase portal, 3x back on dining, online grocery store purchases, and select streaming services, 2x back on all other travel, and then 1x back on everything else. For a lot of people, including myself, your highest spending categories are going to be for grocery stores, gas stations, and dining. So if we take a look at how the point multipliers on the Chase Sapphire Preferred align with the common purchases that most people spend the most amount of money on, you will get 3x back on dining and 3x back on online grocery store purchases. But if we start with the dining category, there are plenty of other credit cards that are out there that give you a better multiplier for dining, such as the American Express Gold Card, which gets you 4x back on that category. Or you could even use the no annual fee at Citi Custom Cash as your dedicated dining card to get 5x back on your top eligible spend category. In my opinion, that multiplier for online grocery store purchases doesn't really matter because most people prefer to shop in store for their groceries anyways. And there is no elevated point multiplier for gas stations, so you don't want to be spending any money on your Sapphire Preferred in those common spending categories because there are better credit cards out there that are better earner cards that get you better point multipliers in those categories. Depending on the point multipliers that you get from other credit cards within your setup, the one point multiplier on the Sapphire Preferred that I actually get some value from is the 2x back on all other travel. The reason that I get value from this multiplier is because I love doing things like booking experiences on Airbnb when I travel, because there are some opportunities to go on some fantastic excursions And I plan to do this when I travel to Panama and Colombia in a couple months. Plus, I don't have a card like the Amex Green card that would give me a better multiplier in that overall travel category. So for now, I use the Chase Sapphire Preferred for those travel purchases that aren't for flights or hotels. Even beyond spending and that all other travel category though, I would still use the Chase Sapphire Preferred for some of the other purchases that I was making, especially in the early months of having the Chase Sapphire Preferred when I was kind of an idiot and I just wanted to use my shiny new card, especially at like Costco, since you do have to use a Visa. But it really just made no sense to do this because I also had the Chase Freedom Unlimited, which gave me 1.5x back on all of my Costco purchases instead of just 1x back. Ultimately, the core reason that a setup like the Chase Trifecta is so powerful in the first place is because you don't have to spend any money at all on your Chase Sapphire Preferred to get significant value and for this card to elevate your travel experiences. Since the Chase Freedom Flex and Chase Freedom Unlimited get better point multipliers, and you can earn points on both of the Chase Freedom cards, then transfer them up to your Chase Sapphire Preferred, and then from your Chase Sapphire Preferred up to Chase's travel partners. Next up, another big mistake that people make on the Chase Sapphire Preferred is missing elevated bonuses. The Chase Sapphire Preferred currently has a welcome bonus of being able to receive 60,000 Chase points when you spend $4,000 or more in the first 3 months. 60,000 Chase points is the same welcome bonus that I got, and that's not a bad offer when you consider how valuable Chase points are, and that you should be able to receive anywhere from like $600 to $1,200 in value, depending on whether you redeem your points for cash back or for travel. But the mistake here is that the Chase Sapphire Preferred does frequently increase those welcome bonuses. And just a couple months ago, the online welcome bonus for the Chase Sapphire Preferred was for 80,000 Chase points. Plus you had the ability to earn 90,000 Chase points if you applied for a Chase Sapphire Preferred in a Chase branch. This is not the only time that the Chase Sapphire Preferred has ever increased its welcome bonus, as my wife Lucia was able to capitalize on a 100,000 point bonus that the Chase Sapphire Preferred was offering a couple years ago. The point here is because of my mistake of not being patient, I missed out on the opportunity to earn an additional 20 to 40,000 Chase points. And if you are someone who falls into the same scenario, and let's say you apply for the Chase Sapphire Preferred and get the 60,000 point offer, but then the Chase Sapphire Preferred increases its bonus to, let's say, 80,000 points the next month, well then there still is an opportunity for you to contact Chase and ask for them to match that new 80,000 point bonus. And I did talk about this more in another video where I discussed some Chase credit card hacks, so I'll link that video up above right now. The next big mistake that people make with the Chase Sapphire Preferred is not adding the Sapphire Preferred early on in your credit card journey. I personally recommend that when you first start out in your credit card journey, you should start out with no annual fee credit cards first, because those cards will have zero downsides, so you'll never need to cancel them, which basically means that you'll be able to continue to increase the length of your credit history, which will have a positive impact on your credit score. The Chase Sapphire Preferred is essential to any Chase credit card setup because it allows you to maximize the value that you get from your Chase points. And even though the Sapphire Preferred does have an annual fee of $95, I think this card should be one of your first 5 credit cards. A huge reason for that is because of the Chase 524 rule, which states that you will not be approved for a new Chase credit card if you've applied for 5 or more personal credit cards in the last 24 months. So I personally made this mistake of the Chase Sapphire Preferred not being one of my first 5 credit cards, and because of that, I was in Chase jail. Essentially, I had to wait like 6 to 8 months until I was finally able to get out of Chase jail and get approved for the Chase Sapphire Preferred. And since I'm on team travel and I do my best to redeem my points for the highest value possible via travel partners, I basically couldn't do anything with my Chase points, and so they were just sitting there in my account until I was actually able to get approved for the Chase Sapphire Preferred. So I think a big mistake that people make with the Chase Sapphire Preferred, which is a mistake that I've made as well, is waiting too long to prioritize the Chase Sapphire Preferred until it's too late and you end up in Chase jail. I totally get wanting to be conservative and starting with no annual fee cards first, but even in the absolute worst case scenario, if you start to dislike your Chase Sapphire Preferred in the future, the card does have a downgrade path to one of the no annual fee Chase Freedom cards, and getting the Chase Sapphire Preferred early is going to be really important to make sure that you avoid Chase jail and can actually make use of your Chase points. Finally, the last big mistake that people make with the Chase Sapphire Preferred is not even considering the Chase Sapphire Reserve. As I mentioned earlier, a card like the Chase Sapphire Preferred is pretty much essential to any Chase credit card setup, especially if you're someone who is on team travel like me, and so you want to figure out the best ways to maximize the value that you get from your Chase points. But the Chase Sapphire Reserve accomplishes a lot of the same things as the Chase Sapphire Preferred, in terms of travel upside, and in some cases does it even better. Yet when a lot of people are ready to add that premium Chase credit card to their setup, most people just automatically go with the Sapphire Preferred without even considering the Sapphire Reserve, a lot of times just because of that higher annual fee. It's true, the Chase Sapphire Reserve does have a much higher annual fee of $550, but the Sapphire Reserve is going to give you a $300 travel credit that can right off the bat decrease your effective fee to $250. Plus, the Chase Sapphire Reserve is going to give you a higher redemption rate when you book travel through the Chase portal, as you'll get 50% higher redemption value, or in other words, 1.5 cents per point for all of those travel bookings. This can be especially useful for those of you who travel domestically pretty frequently, since a lot of times domestic airlines like Southwest aren't necessarily going to give you the highest value. But when you book that Southwest flight with your Sapphire Reserve through the Chase travel portal, you'll have a high floor of 1.5 cents per point. The Chase Sapphire Reserve is also going to give you automatic access to Chase Sapphire lounges, and then some better point multipliers than the Sapphire Preferred, as the Sapphire Reserve will give you point multipliers of 10x back on hotels and car rentals booked through the Chase travel portal, 5x back on flights booked through the Chase travel portal, 3x back on dining, 3x back on travel, and then 1x back on everything else. Personally, I try to travel internationally as much as I can, so I get the best value by utilizing travel partners. And since the Chase Sapphire Preferred and the Chase Sapphire Reserve have that same travel partner capability, I still personally choose the Chase Sapphire Preferred because I get all of the most useful benefits to me at a much lower price. But I do think it's a mistake to automatically choose the Chase Sapphire Preferred, because instead, I think everyone should take a deep look at their own travel and spending preferences. And for a lot of people, the Chase Sapphire Reserve could actually make a lot of sense, especially if you travel domestically pretty frequently. In conclusion, I get a significant amount of value out of my Chase Sapphire Preferred by using the card as my core travel card and utilizing Chase's travel partners. But beyond some of the common mistakes that people make with this card that I discussed in this video, if you want to hear my completely honest thoughts on the Chase Sapphire Preferred after having it for 1 year, then go watch this video next. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.